Hey YouTube, I thought I'd do a video on this subject of how to maintain your perfume. And I was thinking that maybe some people didn't know anything about this subject, and it may sound boring, but I thought, well, why don't I do a video on it and just like throw it out there and see if you guys ever even think about stuff like this. Because if you have a lot of fragrance bottles, what do you do with them? Do you have them on display on your dresser? Or do you just put them wherever? I mean, do you even think about what's happening to them when they're exposed to light and when they're exposed to heat, etc.? So that's what I'm going to touch upon right now. And I'm going to show you a few bottles, some old vintage bottles, and what they look like now. We'll see if they're still any good or not. Anyway, what I've got with me right now is a vintage bottle from from the 90s. This is, or could be early 2000s actually. This is one of my favorites. It's called Organza by Givenchy. And the reason that we know, or I know, that it's older is because it's frosted in the front. And the juice is much deeper in color. And this is what you want to look for if you're going to get a good sample of the original Organza. Just keep that in mind while I'm talking now. The first thing I'm going to say about this is, I touched upon, please keep your bottles out of sunlight. Sunlight degrades the fragrance inside, and you don't want that because that'll affect what it smells like, obviously. Number two, try and keep them in their boxes. This I got as a swap, so actually it just came in this pouch. Years ago I used to swap on Makeup Alley on the fragrance board, and then a few years ago Makeup Alley did away with the swap board, so I lost contact with all the people that I used to swap with. Not that I was like great friends with anybody, but it's just the whole thing fell apart for me. But I used to get a lot of fragrances, you know, in the mail and without a box. However, when I buy them, I always keep them in a box. I always keep the original box. I always keep the fragrance in the box. So very important to remember that if you want to maintain your beautiful perfume as long as possible. Also, temperature control. There are people that refrigerate their fragrances. They actually have a separate refrigerator for that. I don't do that, but as long as you keep them out of the sunlight and then keep them somewhere where it's a constant temperature that's not too hot and not too cold, they should be fine. Actually, I shouldn't say too cold. I mean, like, you know, they can't freeze or anything like that. Obviously, if you keep them in the refrigerator, they're going to be cold, but probably the heat is the worst thing for them. This is a vintage bottle of one of my favorites, Jean 2, which I've also reviewed. I've also reviewed the Organza. If you go into my fragrance review list, you'll find it. And Jean 2 is one of my all-time favorites. I did a video on this about my first fragrance love, I think is what it's called. And this was it. And this bottle is quite old. It's starting to turn. It really is starting to turn, and you can see it's getting darker. It wasn't originally this dark. And I wore it the other day, and I noticed that it was just starting to go on me. This one I got on Etsy, I believe, a few years ago. I love it so much. I'm speechless when it comes to this. It's so complex. I love it. Next one is don't take a bottle, even a small bottle, and throw it in your bag and just leave it in there rolling around. Obviously, it could get damaged and break. So a lot of this stuff is common sense, but people just don't think about it. I'm sure there are people that have big bottles like this. This happens to be a 1990 bottle of Jill Sander number 4, which I've also reviewed. This is the original bottle that I got. And you see how dark it is. When I bought it, it was not quite that dark, but it was getting there, right? Because that is close to the color. And the original bottles are slightly different than the crappy fake ones that you can buy on Amazon these days. But oh, I love the smell of this. I love it. Anyway, so you don't want to take a bottle that you paid a lot of money for, throw it in your purse or your book bag or whatever, and then have it smash all over the place. You have to treat them with some kind of respect. Otherwise, even if somebody gave it to you as a gift, you don't want to ruin it, right? So don't throw them in any bags. Respect them, keep them home, keep them safe. Yes, and the last thing is when you apply fragrance, don't rub your wrists together. No, don't do that. Just spray it on the skin and let it develop on its own. Oh, it's so pretty. Wish you could smell this. Oh, I'm always searching for an original version of this. Hard to find. I have a couple more that I brought down to show you in my collection. I did have some requests to show my collection, but I thought I'd do it in increments. And this time I'm just showing you some of my vintage stuff in relation to talking about how to treat them in general. Keep them out of the light. Keep them in their original boxes. Somehow keep a temperature control system, whether it's refrigeration or keeping them in containers so that they're safe at the same temperature. And don't, treat them with respect. Don't throw them in your bags and stuff. Anyway, this is called Alliage. This is by Estee Lauder. This is another vintage bottle. You can see the juice is very dark. This was an earthy scent from the 70s. And I recently smelled this at the counter. The bottles, obviously, they've just redone the bottles at Estee Lauder, so they look very different, but it's very close to the original scent. So I might just buy a new one and then do a video to compare them, because I really, really like this one. This one is super earthy. Like you can almost smell the dirt. I've always liked this one. This is it says Sport Fragrance Spray. Now, I can't believe anybody would wear this while they were exercising, but that is cute that they called it Sport Fragrance Spray, Alliage. You can actually check. You probably would like this a lot more now because it's similar, but much more for today. This is way earthier. Yeah. And then the other one I have is a really old bottle of Cristal, which is, let's see, it's like a lotion in a spray bottle. They haven't made this in I don't even know if this might be from the 60s. Like, if you know how old this is, let me know. Because I also got this in a swap and I have no clue how old this is. It has a very different, look at that spray. It's like, it's still good though. Probably because it's so encased and protected in this container. And this Cristal, a very green, crispy scent, which I think is still available. I think it is. I have to look it up. This is beautiful. I just like the fact that I have this in its original bottle. And if you're into fragrance, you like stuff like that. So anyway, I hope that for people that really don't know, that's like an oil actually. I forgot. I haven't worn this in a while. It's like a fragrance oil, which I honestly don't think they make this type of thing anymore. But anyway, so that's some of my older stuff that I have, and some of my favorite stuff. And I also, yeah, I hope this was helpful to people that really didn't know what to do with, don't display them on a counter and their bottles in the sunlight. Just don't do stuff like that. if you care to, you know, follow any of my advice, you'll find that they do last longer. And I hope you enjoy seeing some of my old bottles. And I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.